To get started, the usual notice that we are following. This is the OpenSSF GUAC maintenance meeting before the ELF antitrust policy and OpenSSF code of conduct. You can find more on the repos itself. Reminder that the meeting is being recorded and will be made available publicly. Let's see. Welcome new friends. I think all familiar faces. We have two items on the agenda. One is on ACLs and contribution ladder. The other one is on releases. I know I've been out a couple of weeks traveling and on vacation. I did look through kind of briefly previous notes. I think there was some interesting discussion on how we can on I think what Mike you talked about of the I forget what it's called, the security guidelines for OpenSSF, and there's another topic around trustification and trustify and how we can kind of interface with that. If not, I'm not sure whether there was any discussions on other topics for this week. Okay. I think let's go through the first topics and then we can add as we go. First one is Ben. I think this is more on Ben needs access to things, and we should do that. Anything else? I think I'll work on this when we get off the meeting. Other than that, Ben, is there any other things you want to add there?
Nope, just basically there as a reminder that those issues are open.
Okay, the first one is on reviewer for GUAC visualizer. That requires everyone's vote. So you want to just like do that now, and just +1 it if you agree, or say otherwise. I'll put the link in the chat. 1 second. Santiago and Mike, I think we are.
Sorry?
She's consensus. I think you're consensus, right?
Do we have consensus? I think we were quite N-1. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm for it.
Okay, for it. Okay. And I'm assuming Mike,
same.
yes. Okay,
Yep.
cool. We have verbal approval. I think that's good enough. Okay. All right. I'll take these action items. Cool. Ben, you had the next one on community meeting topics.
That is expired.
Oh, that's expired. Am I
Is it-
looking at the wrong one? Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong. Sorry,
Yeah, I say.
my bad.
Didn't think I copied and pasted that one, but
Okay. Um, all right, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, just an FYI. So I did the release on Friday. I had those things in the release notes, and I prepared the blog posts, which I'm about to put out today. And then either me or Ben will do the little note in the GUAC channels or OpenSSF channels, just saying, "Hey, everybody, there's a new release." And there's a blog post there about the functionality I added with Kubescape, which is the topic of my KubeCon talk next week.
Awesome.
More of an FYI. Also, I have to drop out of this meeting in a couple minutes, so sorry about that. I have a phone appointment.
Sounds good. Okay, we don't have any scheduled agenda items on the list. Did we kind of follow up on the discussions around um the trustification slash just trustify data model?
No, we haven't yet. I think. I mean, I think before we jump into that, I think. But do we? What's the thoughts for that 1.0 kind of thing? Like, are we at a point where we want to release it out, or do we not want to? Yeah. Like, what else is left on that? This is kind of sitting in limbo for that. I think we finished most of the things, right?
Yeah, I'm looking. Let me share my screen.
And this way we can, start moving toward start making changes if we want to with Thrustify and all that kind of stuff.
So I think we initially the only thing that seems to be so we figured out the collect sub story. We already re-architected it.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
done. Um, this one is done. All the green stuff is done. We didn't do the user study.
That's fine, I think, for now.
Okay. Just do yeah. Persistent can handle large inputs and well tested. What inputs have you all been running with? I guess like the size wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done some testing and haven't had issues with ingesting lots and lots of data. So it updates OSV, runs on it. So I don't think this is a big. I think this is fine. Like it can handle. Like I think we threw in. I want to say, was it close to 60,000 SBOMs into it? And it's been using. It's been updating licenses and it's been updating vulnerabilities, all that kind of stuff, and it seems fine. No issues.
Okay, I think it'd be nice to be able to say something in the release announcement about that.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, maybe I'm gonna tag you here because I think you guys are running the biggest instance right now.
Mhm. So you can mark that kind of green.
Yeah. And then matching data on each predicate. This is about the deletions. We are not, I don't think that's in scope. I think we did say it's not in scope for this. Do we agree on that? Oops.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then I think the API stuff was the only thing that was really left, right? Find API stability. So the updates got in, and ones that Nathan made also the PR that Marco approved.
I think this comes back to the what is our communication with 1.0, right? Create stages for REST API. Patch planning is not.
I think we call the API still experimental, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is? But the GraphQL is.
Yeah, the GraphQL is stable, the backend is stable, ingesting and collectors, all that kind of stuff. We haven't done much testing with the API. GraphQL has been much more tested, I would say.
So I'm just gonna say REST API is on 1.0.
Yeah.
Then we don't need the API stability stuff. We're not doing this anymore. What's our? I think we still have to talk about GraphQL changes. Does 1.0 mean we're not adding GraphQL changes anymore? Oh,
Changes. Well, I don't know how, I mean, for 2.0, I think we'll do some changes, right?
So let's say before 2.0, right?
Yeah.
Someone
But
wants to
if there's any
do.
other features, you mean?
Yeah, kind of. I'm thinking a little bit on the lines of, okay, we can add new document types. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
won't change anything. Um,
Well, I think the only one that's really open is that, the one that Microsoft is working with
yeah,
the
yeah, that's
OCI
what
stuff.
yeah, that's what I
So
was
maybe
thinking
that's the
about.
conversation we should have before then, yeah, but let's talk to them to be like, hey, what is this use case? If there's any kind of additions we want to on that. And after that, then we can close that out. Because I think that was still up for debate. If there's any kind of changes we wanted on that or not.
So I guess the question for us is like, what is our maintenance structure for 1.0? Are we gonna? I think the best case scenario is that it won't require changes for 1.0. And then they're okay with waiting for the 2.0 for anything that they need major changes for the API on. I'm also assuming that if we have are we gonna require the GraphQL schema doesn't change at all? Or are we saying that you're compatible as long as you use the correct client versions. But it will always
I
say
mean,
backward compatible.
yeah, exactly. I think as long as we
Functionality wise, right?
correct. Yeah, I think as long as nothing breaks from the existing functionality, we can keep adding stuff to it, right?
Yeah, the only tricky part is like if you have a client and server that speaks different version of GraphQL, it's gonna
Yeah,
fail.
yeah. But that should be like something we document, right? It's like, hey, if you are, when a release comes out, like, hey, make sure this is, you document that this will require an update to your GraphQL server or GraphQL client, whatever it is you're using.
So can I maybe say minor version changes may include GraphQL API changes that require update and of deployments of clients and servers. Which is this version. There's a question here whether this GraphQL client issue is actually a bug in the generator.
So if I remember, that was the problem, that if you updated the server, the client will no longer connect until you also updated the code, the generated code on the client.
Okay, and your suspicion was that was a bug rather than just okay.
Yeah, because in JavaScript, so if you use GraphQL from JavaScript, that's why they created GraphQL, so that the clients shouldn't update their queries or anything else. They just connect to the server and send the JSON documents and get back the response even, and the server can update in parallel. As long as the query itself doesn't change, you wouldn't need to sync the clients.
Interesting. So I know we had this issue with the visualizer. If it is a client issue and the Golang one works, then it probably is a bug in the GraphQL generation for the JavaScript client.
Yeah.
So I think we need to test this. And also, I think Jeff has done some work on this. Okay. So I think this requires next steps on both the checking of the GraphQL compatibility and then talking with Robbie and Alex.
Okay.
I can
Yeah, let's
schedule a
just
meeting with this. I feel like this point on the deployment, that's something that Jeff seems to be involved with, and I don't know how it's going to impact the Helm chart. So I think we should probably continue this discussion when Jeff is here.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so overall, not too bad. I think we're pretty close to, kind of getting stuff aligned.
Okay. And then I think the only thing that's lacking is kind of like messaging around the 1.0. I think it would be nice to kind of maybe get a draft on what that may look like. I'm not sure, Ben, whether you've had some thoughts on this since you've been writing a lot of the communications.
Yeah, I could put together a draft of sort of, what we want that to look like, and then figure out the specifics. I assume we're probably not going to be doing this in the next like 2 weeks.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
I
today's-
think like once we should hopefully resolve the rest of the issues by next meeting. Fingers
Okay.
crossed. So probably the week after that would be a good time.
Okay. Yeah, because today's my only day in the office, and then I'll be at KubeCon next week. So just trying to figure out like how urgently I should work on this, but I can probably work on it, at KubeCon and stuff. So
Yeah, I think 2-3 weeks is fine. I think since everyone's going to be at KubeCon also, I'm not sure we're gonna even make much progress on these items as well. Cool. Path, anything else that comes to mind?
So it's 1.0 stuff? No, I think that's it. Yeah. Nothing else I can think of.
Okay, sounds good. Cool. Yeah, I guess we have now half an hour open. Anything that folks want to talk about? If not, I had one thing which isn't of high importance, but it was like a little bit on the predicate usage.
Yeah, well, I would just, to see, can we make some plans about how we're gonna progress with the V2? Just, I'm not, I guess what I'm interested in, do you folks need at this point anything from me? I mean, we went through a couple of things. I think most of the architecture and database design things. If there's anything else, I think Brendan, you said you had some questions about ingestion, so maybe we can go through that at some point. I was just wondering after that, what would be our next steps? Yeah. Because I think, as you said, like the KubeCon is there. I think we're planning to release also a product version in a couple of weeks or a month. And then I guess it will be a more pressure to like figure out the community, the foundation, and things like that. But, so, yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, folks? So we wait until
So
1.0 to be released and then start this. I guess everybody will be busy for the next 2 weeks. At least.
I don't think we have to. Like, I think we don't have to wait for 1.0 for the discussion. I think the 2.0 is like a separate thing.
Yeah.
I think also. I think we are aligned with like like the ideal state of like, oh yeah, there should be like one data model, you know, that's an implemented backend. We have the different collectors, we have the different passes, and like architecturally I think it's pretty similar. I think that the question is like, how do we take the pieces and use them, and also like what our timeline of that wants to look like, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, I am completely aware this is not a straightforward thing, but yeah. I mean, both efforts have a considerable amount of work already in it, right? So how do we combine them? Yeah.
I think it would help to start with like an architecture in my mind. Like to say like we believe like these are the major components and like what each component should be doing. And then
So I have a thought here. I don't know how this is something we can like combining the projects together is going to be crazy amount of work, right? I feel like because it's going to be a lot of changes and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, what I think the way we started the GUAC via the graph, I think a lot of people like the idea of like having everything into a graph database and like, okay, how do we make connections? How do we use everything together? And then Trustify, takes much more importance on the SBOM and all those, vulnerabilities. How do you connect all that data together? How do you make it usable for the user? And how do you display it properly? All that kind of stuff, right? Could they remain as two separate things? And like, it would Red Hat be like, okay, donating it to the GUACSec org and being like, hey, this is a separate, like, instead of combining the two and making a mess out of it, one is very focused on, hey, this is how it should be used today, like SBOMs, all that kind of stuff, and this is how you should be thinking about the product. Trustify does that really well, and then okay, the user can use it. They get the value out of it, and then GUAC seems to be when we started the GUAC thing is it was much more grand, where like, hey, can we do a lot of different things with it? Can you put attestations in there? Can you put all these other kind of other data in there, runtime data, stuff like that Trustify currently does not handle. Like that's what we were thinking about over here on the GUAC side. So I feel like combining the two would be a detriment to both projects. And I feel like it would be better if they were kept separate. In my opinion. And we promote both of them like, hey, straightforward SBOM, vulnerability management, all that kind of stuff. Trustify is a thing you use for that. And then, and then the GUAC graph is still there for like the long-term vision of like, oh, people want to use more than vulnerabilities. I care about attestations. I care about this other things that I want to throw into this graph, and I want to see if I can do some analysis, right? Some some long-term analysis with it. Stuff like Santiago. We're working on with some universities on like, can we do some analytics on some of this data to pull out some things that the graph is maybe more suitable for, right? So stuff like that. That's my thought process here. So, Mike, go ahead.
I don't think we necessarily need to say it's one or the other. Sorry, pardon me. I don't think we necessarily need to say it's one or the other. It could be that we start off by saying, hey, no, they're two separate related projects. And then over time, and again, it's going to be a lot of work, but I don't think we necessarily need to do all that work all at like, hey, we're doing one full redesign right out of the gate. But like the way I sort of, and I know we've had this conversation in the past, I like, it's just different views into the data, I think. Where the data is the canonical data is the original SBOM and the attestation and so on. And whether or not you throw that data, like I feel like it's like you throw it out a bucket, you then consume those things where it's like, I need to get the graph analysis. Great. You go to the GUAC graph. Hey, I just need to do some basic stuff regarding, vulnerability management and yada, yada. Cool. Let's bring in, like you send it to the Trustify section of that thing. But I think the thing that we just need to be maybe is the area we need to sort of build is almost like not necessarily a shim, but it's like that we have the ingesters. It's just like, where does this kind of go from, hey, we have nothing, to now we have a whole bucket of stuff, to now, oh, we send the stuff here, here, or here, depending on the different things. Because again, this kind of like, I'm reminded of, how Google sometimes is like, oh, just throw it at BigQuery, right? Like you just throw a bunch of stuff and you throw it at BigQuery and you got to kind of get your answers. But hey, when that doesn't work and you need to kind of do this, the other thing, that's kind of when you go to a different mechanism to kind of do that. And yeah, BigQuery is way too expensive. Ask us how we know. No, but I think anyway, my point there is I don't necessarily think we need to do one or the other. I think we could start with saying they're both separate, and then over time we start to work to get them to kind of operate more closely. Because again, I think talking to folks, the value they found from GUAC was one, it's a great little like the graph itself is cool and it's super fancy new tech, and it can answer a lot of the complicated questions. It's a challenge to run, but the thing that people have brought up is we wrote ingesters before anybody else really wrote ingesters for a lot of these things. We wrote parsers and some of these other things that other folks had not written. We have all of that in there. So GUAC is like, it's a combination of things. It's a library. It's a bunch of these. It's the data model. It's all of it's like the approach of how you do this. And so I think that there is that sort of suite of GUAC tools. And it's like, I just think the challenge and is and maybe we throw this to Ben with all of his spare time is what is that journey look like of when do I need the graph versus when do I need Trustify versus when do I just need, because again, I think we could also write a couple of GUAC tools that are just, it's a shell script around JQ, right? Like, and you can kind of get some answers there. Or it's, hey, a shell script around OSV or whatever. And then show people that journey to, oh my God, you're a multinational corporation with 100,000 SBOMs. Yes, you should have the graph. Yes, you should have these other pieces. Yes, it is going to be hard, but if you're that far along, you can, yeah. Anyway, Brendan.
Yeah, I think you kind of articulated what I was trying to get to with the architecture, which is not more of a sense of like, okay, here's how these two things integrate together, but like more of a blueprint of like, if you're working on a problem of like taking the data and using it, like these are like patterns you should do so that, as an industry, we don't end up with 10 different implementations doing different things and then just everything not working with each other, right? Which is what we have today. To me, that is kind of what I think people look to in the GUAC community to be like, okay, yeah, there looks like there's going to be some standardization on how we use these things, interfacing data together. That's what like a lot of folks that are data producers have approached us about. So I think that kind of core principle about like let's make sure everything, the software metadata is joinable, is usable, is ingestible. I think that being kind of like the data model and the ontology and how people use it in the sense of like, look, these are anti-patterns. You should not be, I don't know, you shouldn't be running ingesting us forms over and over again, multiple times a day, or like you should not be, running vulnerability scans every single second on all this data. And kind of whenever you ingest new information, you have to look for new information. You have to, kind of like the collect subscriber architecture where you are constantly getting new information. You need these tools and these components in order to be successful in managing your data. So I think I'm in agreement where the eventual consistency is that tools should work together, and this may be Shopify, this may be other tools that maybe someone else is developing, right? But in the end, like dev still dev, and like like end of life service, for example, should be able to have a way to interface together, right? Um, and I think that to me is what I think the community, my perspective of what I think the community has value in. And I agree with Mike where I don't think it has to be something that happens overnight. As long as I think there is a place to have the conversation and we are able to productively iterate on what that shared architecture / vision looks like.
Yeah, so I agree that the information should be that, like, I guess it decides, I guess maybe the first point is like, okay, yeah, you when you figure out, okay, what is your use case for what you want, what are you trying to do today, right? I think the GUAC use case was something we were kind of far ahead of the time, right? I think most people are like, I just want to know what's happening, right? And that's where Trustify would come into play. It's like, yeah, just tell me. I care about vulnerabilities. I care about Vex at this point, right? I'm not generating much attestations. I'm not doing anything else. So let me, like, give me a solution for that. And I think GUAC, we were very ambitious and we did a lot. And I think we were like you said, all this software metadata that's out there should all be connected together. So that's useful for something, right? So I do like I mean, that's why I think the approach of starting simple and combining them together in the future, I think makes sense. However we can. But I want to hear Dijon's thoughts. Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah. Let me try to collect them. No, but this is all great conversation. Thanks. I mean, yeah, sooner or later, we should have this. And by the way, I personally don't think it's a bad idea to, like, start with the projects. I just didn't want to go into the direction like competing directly. I don't think that makes sense, right? And so I don't know how, for example, you guys are feeling towards having another similar project within the OpenSSF or even within the GUAC sec organization to do this. We can talk about it. The other thing is, I think one of the issues we had is that, like, we started with talking about the graph database and solving things like that, but then we are fallback, both of us, to a basic relational database. So I'm just thinking, going forward, then we will have, yeah, there will be a lot of overlap, right? So we will have basically two similar databases with two similar things. And third thing is, yeah, I think we are all about, yeah, SBOMs and vulnerabilities at the moment, but I think that will just, be progressed going forward from our product manager, product managers. I know that, there's already talks about fixed store and signatures and things like that. So I guess attestations and other stuff are on the plans. So how we, again, not ending up doing a parallel work. How do we combine all these things? I don't have answers. Yeah, just just putting things on the table. Yeah. Okay. I mean, we can stop here for now. We can continue discussing if you have other topics. I was just yeah, I was just curious what would be the next concrete step we can do, and so yeah. I mean, if it's just donating Trustify to OpenSSF or GUAC, that's cool. And then thinking about how to go towards merging things, because as I said, like we had that meeting where James talked about graphs things in Trustify, how we can leverage that. I'm sure. So what I'm doing at the moment is like a lot of creating a lot of issuing a lot of complex queries to the database that don't perform too well. So some kind of analytics are certainly coming there in the future. So like as you said, like GUAC started as like a more broad scope. We started more focused, but I think yeah, why are we talking is that because I think we are basically on the long term trying to like yeah, solve the same issue, right? Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes sense in the sense of like, um, Trustification says Trustify and GUAC being part of the same community, right? Because we are solving the same problem from slightly different angles, right? I think Trustify and Trustification has taken the tactical approach of like we're gonna start super practical and just start on the small set of software metadata, and then we've kind of taken the research approach. Like GUAC has taken the research approach. And I think it's beneficial, right? Because in the end, those two, as the maturity of data gets there, those two will meet. And I think we also have that synergy in terms of people wanting a little bit more functionality and so on. I think from a community aspect, I see that being a huge win, right? So no matter what, whether it's a quad community, whether it's we decide on open SSL community, if we have a community for discussing what to do with metadata, how to join them, how to write parsers and stuff like that, I think we should definitely have that. I personally, I think am not married to the idea of like using well, I still don't think I have clear ideas on how the technicalities of the projects would come together. But in my mind, one idea could be also, that oops, sorry. That we have kind of like we can kind of play test some of the experimental things, and then eventually, they make it a justified justification. I don't know. I'm just shooting off the cuff, right? But I think my thought is that the community aspect definitely 100%. We should make something happen there. It'll make the community stronger. I think we get more
Mhm.
perspective. It will further
Yeah.
the mission of getting everyone together. And I
Yeah.
I feel like that's enough for us to at least like start with like what we want to do, the open SSF such the community donation and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like you said, Brendan, I think it shows that the OpenSSF is like overall the whole community is thinking about the same problem, and how do we come up with a good solution around this? So yeah, I think at the start it might be like, hey, yeah, maybe Trustify comes into the GUAC org under OpenSSF kind of thing, right? And this way, it's all like, okay, yeah, OpenSSF, GUAC, Trustify under, they're all thinking about the same problem, and we want to, the community comes together and like, okay, how do we solve this? Which is there more need for the graph? Is there more need for, this relation database? Like all those kind of questions, kind of, more people like think about it and talk about it. Like, okay, what do we need to do to further make this more adoptable, make this more usable? Everything. I think instead of having two separate things, I think having every together, and then we can figure out like once it's. I think that's a good starting point, and then it's like, okay, then how do we merge the two, or how do we figure out more ways to, instead of having two separate things, like, okay, like Mark is saying, like, do we make a shim saying like, hey, if you have this use case versus this use case for now, and then like, yeah, however we want to do it in the future. I think that'd be a good starting point. Dijon.
Yeah. I mean, to me personally, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, I think like, yeah, over time we can start thinking about how to basically merge database schema, for example, like how to make Trustify work with something that's already important into GUAC and vice versa, right? And then like, okay, like you have SBOMs, you have things like that, you can query it both ways and figure out, from there. So maybe, yeah, one thing could be like a more, API, GraphQL experimentation and things like that. The other part could be more like it's a UI and things that we like, wanna have people to like with a more experimental, more stable, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah, and also think just like having some community, being able to say like, oh yeah, there are all these pieces that make sense to be to be shared, right? Like passes and stuff like that. How do we get that to a point where all like we can share passes, or like everyone should be able to use the passes that the community creates, right? No one should be writing their own pass. I think in that sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like having a library for these things is good, and sharing the library between these things.
Yeah, that's where we get into the issue of Go and Rust and different stacks. But
there are some really good protobuf or similar sorts of libraries for both. So I think there's some good ways to sort of describe the data model independently of either, and then make it easy.
yeah, I know, Mike, you mentioned at some point that you were working on some kind of parsing abstraction for things and
Yeah, I could show folks that after KubeCon EU.
So that could be a good thing, like extract things like this and try to figure out how to start reusing code and schemas and things between the projects.
Would
Okay,
you say that it? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna suggest next steps. where do you think it would make sense maybe if you discuss with the team and we can work together on at least like writing out on the strategic level, like what are things that we want out of this, and then that could potentially lead to the initial, at least figure out the open source fit of the project first, and so that we have something that makes sense, that whether it donates to we can decide then to what donation model, whether you're gonna donate directly to OpenSSF for us to have a community. We can rename the community. I don't know, like, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so let me pass this on to the team, and yes, so I guess next week this call won't happen, right, because of KubeCon. So let's discuss it. Discuss it afterwards. But yeah, I think then that's a great idea. Yeah. So if the guys agree, I guess they will start working on a proposal. Yeah, how to propose this vision of going forward with both in the start and because yeah, Mike, I also put you on the spot. I remember your proposition for the future of having different kind of things for different use cases. So analytic stuff, graph stuff, relational database stuff. I think this fits well into that a high level picture of yeah, people will want to do different things with the data eventually, right? So, and what we are doing at the moment is we are putting everything in the database, and then from this database we will push it differently, like create this in-memory graphs or other systems. So maybe that's some kind of things that we can think about doing.
Yeah. I think I can try and dig it up in a few weeks. I had written up like a very basic whatchamacallit, a very basic diagram that sort of showed like supply chain metadata, and then it sort of like fanning out, like where I do think we need to sort of have an abstraction for bucket, whether that bucket is a directory, whether that bucket is a cloud bucket, whether that bucket is some other sort of distributed file system, having something that is just like, hey, data flows here, and then it flows into the different that I know these are all overloaded, terrible terms, but like data lake versus data warehouse versus whatever, but like it flows in somewhere, and then it flows into things like, and eventually I think we can make it more efficient, but I think it doesn't matter right now to say, yep, you care about the vulnerabilities and blah, blah, blah. Hey, that gets sent over there. And then separately, while that's being processed, it begins to get processed in the GUAC database. Hey, that takes a little longer, whatever. But having all of those things, because my FOSDEM talk was, which didn't go over particularly well, just because, anyway. But I think the FOSDEM stuff was, hey, like you could use JQ on a handful of SBOMs today. You could use DuckDB in memory to do SBOM analysis on a handful of SBOMs today. You don't need to spin up any database. But, oh, you have a bunch of stuff. Now you actually want to keep track of these things. I think having that sort of journey is going to be super useful to the folks who are using this, because like you have folks like Nisha, for example, who are like, I just want to visualize one SBOM. Oh, great. Maybe we should work with folks to say, hey, what tools could visualize one SBOM, and just kind of load that into sort of the GUAC or whatever we call it family of tools.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good to me.
I didn't realize, but that was a good discussion. We went over time, but we just on the dot. Okay, let's pick this up again. I like the discussion, and I feel like once everyone's back from QCon, and it makes sense for us to like get together in a smaller group, and then plus the marketing folks as well. We can probably do that.
Perfect. And in the meantime, I'll get all the feedback from our side, what they think about it, and
yeah. Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.